speaker, Bobby Kasanga, to share with us. So, Bobby, welcome.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me. Um, yeah, you want me to share my story?
Yes, please.
Okay, sure. So my name is Bobby Kasanga. I'm 34 years old. Originally from Congo. That's what my parents' background is. Came to the UK as a 3-year-old. Um, Grew up in Peckham, South London. So not too far from Angie, Fitzgerald Lewisham. So we was in Southwark. And so she's my mortal enemy. Not joking, but yeah. So I grew up and I was fascinated with football. Football was my life, is my passion, is what I wanted to do. And it's sort of funny what the gentleman that just came on was saying in terms of sort of role models and the people you look up to. So we grew up in a household where both parents were there. And I guess the difference, what I try to say when I speak to people of this generation now, the younger generation, is that our families come into the UK, for example, so African families come to the UK, they couldn't just come to the UK and get a job in the city. They couldn't just become doctors. They couldn't just have a job that was paying them at 9 to 5. They had to get shift jobs. They had to go work in the cab office. They had to go and work cleaning homes and cleaning hotels and stuff like that. So that sort of laid the legacy in regards to parents watching out and looking out for what you're doing, because they were having to work in certain unsociable hours. So that sort of leaves you to your devices. And my older brother was a big influence to me. And I always tell him this. I said, if you had been a doctor, I would have been a doctor. If you had been a police officer, maybe I would have been a police officer. But he chose the route of the gangs. And he was someone that was a very good looking guy. All the girls really used to like him when he was younger. So when I saw the attention he was getting from being involved in the gangs and the girls, naturally I thought, I want some of that. So I literally started following in his footsteps. And before I knew it, I was part of the Peckham Boys, and I was recruited. I was recruited by chance, and it's funny enough, the story of how I got recruited as a Peckham Boy, I've done it on YouTube, and to this day, it's got something for 400 and something thousand views, and that's what kind of launched my YouTube channel. So now we nearly got 60,000 subscribers, where I tell different stories of sort of my upbringing and what I've been through. But anyway, moving on from that, as he joined the gangs, I also decided to join the gangs, and before I know it, he's getting arrested, and I'm trying to cover up for him. He's been kicked out the house. So a lot of the things that Angie was saying earlier is it's difficult for parents when you love your child and you want to discipline your child, but they're not listening. So what can you do? It's kick them. It's that tough love. And with that tough love, there's also that scare that what happens if something happens to them, why you kick them out? Are you going to blame yourself forever? So it's always that sort of in the background that I know with my parents. So in the end, I was always quite intelligent. Football, like I said, football was my passion. But you would find that when we would have sort of matches and training sessions, my parents couldn't take me because they'd be working. Whereas our counterparts, sort of the white families, where weekends was their time off. Their weekends, they'll be there with their families and friends. And on a weekend, I'll have some of the other parents picking me up to take me to the matches. So there's always that sort of disconnect with your parents. For me, for that generation, being African as well, because they didn't quite understand the importance of them being there. But at the same time, their importance was, of course, trying to make a living and get a job and provide for the family that way. Because if they don't work, we don't eat, right? So I try to teach parents now to try to find that balance and try to make enough time to actually speak to your children. Because I think that's what sometimes happens. However, what I will say is this: no matter what a parent tells their child, there's no bigger influence than peer pressure. Peer pressure is the biggest influence on any child in the world. We've all seen it. We've all been there. Our parents give us a curfew, be home at 7 p.m. Your friend says, oh, come on, stay a bit longer, because your friends are staying out a bit longer. You defy your parents' rules. You go against what they say because the influence or not of the fear of trying to miss out. Because I remember sneaking out to go to under 18 raves. I was told I wasn't allowed that, but I'll sneak out. I'll go home and get the beats. But at least on Monday, I'll be able to have a discussion with everyone in school about how great the party was. And that's the sort of mindset I had, because our peers and our friends were the people that we looked up to. And what it was, a lot of these young people were competing with each other because you want to have the nicest clothes, the nicest outfits, trying to impress the girls. And this is what we try to teach now, is that those things are not even needed at the time. They're not necessary. But moving on, anyway, so in 2003, I leave my parents' house. I'm 17 years old. I had a big bust up. I moved to East London. I'm living on my own. So at the same time, like I said, I was quite intelligent in school. I done my GCSEs, done pretty well. Went to Richmond upon Thames College. I was doing 4 A levels, but being 17, I even managed to get a part-time job. I was working part-time at Peacocks in Stepney Market in Watney Market in Stepney. I was trying to play football, playing football for Fisher Athletic at the time, which was a semi-pro club. And I started getting involved in selling drugs plus going to college. So you can imagine that 17-year-old trying to do all those 4 things, something had to give. And the first thing that gave was the education. I didn't see any value in it at the time. I thought, I need to make money. I'm living on my own. And which way I'm going to make money? Then it stems from sort of selling little bags of weed to sort of harder drugs, and then to the point that where my friend introduced me to doing security van robberies. At first, when he told me about it, I'm not doing that. Hell no, I'm not involved in that at all. And then he came back and he had £10,000. Can you imagine at 18 years old seeing £10,000 in cash for the first time? Like, no matter what anyone tells you, your head is turned, your influence, because he's going to shopping and he's buying me a few bits and he's got all this money. So I'm like, when are we in the next one? So I got into that lifestyle of robbing security vans. And then in 2007, an unfortunate incident happened. So on the 3rd of February is one of my brothers' one of my brothers' birthday, one of my cousin's birthday. But also there's one of my friends, Javari Crichton. By this point, he started doing these robberies as well. And on the Friday night before, on the 2nd of February 2007, we all met up. They had planned this robbery for the next day. By this time, I was taking my football seriously. So I had a match. I got recruited to the first team of Ashford Town, Middlesex. So I was playing a game against Folkestone, so we had to travel down to Kent. And they're like, "Hey, we've got a robbery plan tomorrow." I said, "Look, I'm not doing that. I got my debut. I was 20 years old at the time." He's gone and done the robbery, and he's ended up getting killed because of a disagreement over the money. I remember the people who called me, and I'm on a bus with sort of a team full of white people, and I'm in tears crying. They don't quite understand because it's a different world to them. I'm like, oh my God, my friend's dead. They look at me like, well, what's going on here? So by the time I've got back to London, I went to go to see his family. Everyone's angry, and then 2 days later, an innocent young boy ended up being killed. 15-year-old boy by the name of Michael Dosumnu. He ended up being killed because he was the friend of the person who had killed my friend. It was his older brother. So they're looking for the older brother and ended up killing the younger brother by mistake. And at the time, I'm the prime suspect. It's got nothing to do with me, but people are like, oh, that was your friend. You was involved. Remember, police came to my mum's house in Peckham. They came and raided my house in Hackney looking for me. I went to go and hand myself in. I'm like, I'm not involved in this. Then they've arrested me. And then they've charged me with the robberies, different robberies that I'd done, but none of those robberies were with those guys. And then eventually the people who did commit the murder got found guilty, and they got given 30 years each. So I ended up spending 8 years of my life in prison. And while I was in prison, so I was in prison from 2007 all the way to 2015. But as I said, I've always been quite intelligent and always been quite resourceful and had that entrepreneurial spirit. So while I was in prison, I didn't rely on anyone because you people, yo, send me money, and no one will send you money. The visits weren't that much because my parents had this whole sort of tough love thing. Well, you didn't want to listen, so there you go. So they visited maybe twice in that whole period. So I had to sort of fend for myself. So I ended up opening up a casino in there, had a betting shop in there, had a food shop in there. So just being very resourceful to myself. But I remember going when I moved into Pentonville prison, and I was like, you know what? I've always been quite intelligent. Why am I going to waste this time? I should use this time as basically as if I'm at boarding school. So I applied for a degree from the Open University in social policy. And while actually studying the crime and social policy, while actually studying that degree, it kind of opened my eyes. Crime was always my fault. I chose, it was my decision to get into that. But we look at the things that affect our lifestyle. So basically, lack of opportunities, inequalities, parents' household incomes, peer pressure, everything that that can influence someone to go and do wrong. Ultimately, it's your own decision, because there's a lot of people who come from the same environment and decide not to do those things. So I was studying that degree and decided to write 2 books while I was in there, and the books were basically based around that murder. So I kind of done like a who done it sort of thing. And I had an illegal mobile phone while I was in prison, so I used to send people snippets via Facebook, and it got quite a bit of a following. So and while I was in there, I saw so many talented young people in prison coming in and out of jail, and so good at football and so good at different things. And a lot of them didn't know anything about semi-pro football. They just thought that, oh, you have to be a professional. I was like, no, I used to be a semi-pro footballer. So, excuse me, with that knowledge, when I was released on the 24th of February 2015, I said, you know what, I'm going to try and give back to the community and give back to society and try to start my own football club to keep the kids off the streets. So I was released on 24th of February, like I said, 2015, 6 years ago. And within a month, I started the football club. I started the campaign. I started doing Twitter. I didn't know nothing about Twitter. I was in prison at the time. So I launched that, and then I just literally go door knocking. Can you imagine that? I'm 6'2", knocking on people's doors, saying, "Hi, I've just been released from prison. I want to start a football club." People looking at me sort of shocked, like, "What the hell is this guy doing?" Some people closed the door on me. Some people said, "Oh, no." Some people gave me time. Said, what are you trying to do?" Some people gave me money. They went, "Oh, hang on." They'll leave their door open, go upstairs, and come back and give me money. I mean, I could have been a robber or something, gone inside the house and stolen. But when people started seeing that, the word sort of started going around to this guy that said he wants to start a football club. So people started kind of giving me a bit of a following. Then I started recruiting the young people in and around the area. And I got them to go and volunteer. I said, you can't play for this football club without volunteering. That was the ethos of the football team. Because if you want to play for this club, I want to teach you about trying to support your community. Because like I said, I wanted to give back. And then through the back of just doing that, the club sort of grew to the point, if I go fast forward now, 6 years in, I just celebrated 6 years out of prison. We're now actually a semi-professional football club. We play in the 10th division of British football. We are sponsored by the biggest sports brand in the world, Nike. We featured in countless campaigns with them. FIFA put us on their website. I won a Daily Mirror's Pride of Sports Award. So is that like Pride of Britain, but the sports version in 2018. They surprised me on live TV. They made me go to BT Sports for some, I thought I was doing some advert, but then they just, Robbie Savage, like, "Oh, you're here by default. We actually lied to you. You actually won an award. So if you ever get a chance to see that on YouTube." And yeah, and then I got, like 2019, I got invited to Downing Street by Theresa May. And the organization has sort of just grown and grown. And what we do now, we're just more than a football club. We don't just provide football, we provide gangs and paper show workshop. We go into prisons, that actually taking lots of celebrities into prison, taking the likes of sort of Dappy, Joe Black, rappers who are sort of known in the industry, of taking all of them into prison and do matches and workshops in there. And in 2019, I launched the 32 Borough Cup, which was basically a London-wide tournament. As the World Cup has 32 teams, London has 32 boroughs, ironically. So I decided, you know what? Let's sort of squash this myth of postcode wars to show that we can bring all these youths together. So I had over 600 youths from representing every single borough in London. Everyone told me it can be a bloodbath. Don't do it. These kids are going to bring knives. But we had it over 2 days, but we doubled it up as a workshop and also a traineeship and sort of jobs fair. So while they weren't playing football, there's opportunity for them to go and to speak to different organizations who's offering sort of internships and employability and education and so on. So we're hosting that again this year in July. So if there's any organization who wants to come down and volunteer or wants to come down and support the young people by offering sort of jobs or work experience, please do get in touch. Our Nike actually collaborated with us and made specialized jersey for the team. So this wasn't just the Nike UK team, it was actually the Nike global team from the US. They came down from the US and made specialized kits for the team, which sold out worldwide in 2018 and 19. We're about to do a second version with them. And I remember being in prison, like I said, I was writing these 2 novels, and I'll give out these novels to everyone and say, "Oh, look, guys, read my novel." And the officers and teachers, everyone's reading it. But I remember there's one officer when I was in HMP Ford, he told me, what's wrong with you prisoners? You think you're going to come to prison, write a book, and you're going to do well with it? Like, that's all bullshit. Excuse the language. And I was that sort of galvanized me. I'm like, I'm going to prove this guy wrong, to the point that now those books, the rights to those books have both been bought by a company called Bad Wolf. So they make Discovery of Riches for Sky One and His Dark Materials for BBC One. And Channel 4 are in the process of maybe acquiring that. So we're sort of, I think it's like 80% deal done. It could still turn around because of COVID and everything, but it's looking like it's going to happen. But fingers crossed it does. And basically, there's going to be a new drama series called Hackney Wick, based around a fictional character who's come out of prison and started their own football club. So watch out for that in your screens the next year, 18 months to 2 years or so. So that's in the pipeline. And literally, like I said, the 24th of February, 2021 was 6 years to the date where I've been released from prison. Literally on that date, we got a email from the lottery telling us that they've going to award my organization 5 years worth of funding, which for me is amazing. That means now I can go and employ more people. I can utilize more of the work that we do and just really try to push people into employment, into education, get them to play football. Like I said, we're a semi-pro football club. So we're giving the young people a platform to actually, you know what, instead of going to to the gangs, joining the criminal activity. Say, you know what, these are opportunities that our campaigns called Think Outside the Blocks, but to get them to think outside their environment, think about outside their estates, the people they hang out with, to say there's so much money to be made in the creative industries. There's so much different things that you can do that people don't teach us. We just think, okay, we have to be a footballer, we have to be a rapper. No, these people are making so much money being a graphic designer, UX writer, and so on. And these our young people don't know about these things. They just think, okay, I'm gonna go and sell some weed and some drugs, and I'll make money that way. And these are the sort of things that's fueling the gang culture because of the territories that are out there. So our whole thing is about education. It's about giving opportunities and showcasing them that, you know what, there's different avenues that you can get into that you probably wasn't aware of, that you can make the same amount of money, if not more, that you would from instead of selling drugs. And then you don't have the whole thing of looking over your shoulders for gang rivals, looking over your shoulders over the police and so on. So these are the sort of things that we're trying to teach our young people. So in a nutshell, yeah, that's my story.
Excellent, excellent. Let's give him a clap of
Thank you.
done. You thought really fast, but you got it all. Excellent. So I'm just going to ask you a few questions and just break it down a bit, and then I'm sure some other people will have some questions. So you said that your family came from the Congo, yeah?
That's correct, yeah.
Great, great. And what was it like in your home when you all came to the UK? What was it like in terms of discipline, structure?
Very, very, very disciplined. I grew up in a household with my uncle and auntie, so I was always aware that that wasn't my mum and dad, but it was my mum's younger brother who looked after me. So there's, for me personally, they're just like my mum and dad. But there was always structure. My dad was very disciplined, and he was a big giant of a man. And when he said something, you sort of listened. And my mum was always like, the household was spotless. Even if you go there to this day, everything, you won't find a spot of water in the drain, in the sink. So we were very disciplined in doing our chores. So when we needed things, we was able to get them. Although it would be, we want a new PlayStation, or you're not gonna get it now. Maybe in a couple months later, after everyone's got their PlayStation, then maybe 4 or 5 months later we'll get ours. So it was a happy home.
Yeah, exactly. So, how young were you when you started on the road? Because you said you were following your brother, but how young were you?
I was 14. I was 14 because I used to see the people my age sort of hanging around, and I'd wanted to get part of them because you saw them as the cool kids, right? So, but I didn't know how to get involved. And funnily enough, one of them tried to rob me, and because he tried to rob me, and I was like, "What are you doing?" No, that's Carly's little brother. And when he said, "Oh my God, I didn't know you're one of us," literally, that's how I was recruited. Where I was going to become a victim of a robbery. It turned around and said, "Oh, you know what? You're part of the Peckham Boys now," and that's how I was recruited.
Okay. And when you did all these things that led you to prison, did you think about your family background and how they would feel?
Yeah, 100%. But I always tell my parents this: as much as they would say, "Stop doing what you're doing, it's not right." When I was making substantial better money, people would take the money. My parents would take the money, and it's sort of like either you don't want me to do this or you want me to do this. Because as much as they'll say, "Stop doing what you're doing," when I come back home with 5 grand and say, "Here's 2 grand, mum," that's the rent for the month for the couple of months that's going by itself. And that's a trip to Congo. People take the money. So that was the difficulty that I had sort of personally dealing with that. But I'll justify it basically. I'll justify my actions with saying, well, at least I'm supporting my family.
Okay, at least you're supporting your family. I think that's what a lot of people say. That's their justification, or they're going to buy their parents this big, big house when really they're thinking about themselves. When all
100%, 100% is that the thing is that I mean, you hear with all the rappers and all the young people, oh yeah, my dad left and I was trying to make money to support my mum. Your mum didn't ask you to. Your mum didn't say you should go and do this. It's their greed. It's their own selfishness. It's our own selfishness. We want the latest drip. If we're honest, we want the latest clothes. We want the latest Versace. We want the latest Moschino. To impress the girls. We want to go with the latest cars. And sometimes I have a joke about this, and I mean this like in jest, of course, but I always say to the girls and the young and the women also, they too have a part to play in this because women, not all women per se, before I get crucified, always kind of do seem to like the bad boy. The bad boy was the guy that you had Eric, who was a smart book nerd at school that was always doing his work, that was quiet. He asks you out on a date, you don't date him. But you got the next guy who's always loud, he's aggressive in school, he's out there selling drugs. There's that appeal. So sometimes guys who were sort of good natured thought, you know what? I need to be like those guys because those are the sort of guys that the girls like. But again, it's education. I can never blame women or girls for that, but that does play a part in process in regards to how people want to sort of change their whole narrative, basically.
Okay. The other question is, when you went into prison, if you don't mind answering this, what was your mum's reaction?
Oh, she was distraught. She was distraught. And by this time, like I said, I grew up with my auntie and uncle. By this time, my mum had come to the UK as well. And she was distraught.